Now I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Abla Latif, Research Director at the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies. Thank you so much. I will not take much time here. I'd like to warmly welcome all of the attendees here, and I want to thank Captain Sameh Al-Hifni because His Excellency the Minister of Civil Aviation was really keen and interested in this symposium, and that's why he sent Captain Sameh on his behalf, because the ministry wanted to benefit from the results of this study. So I welcome all the panelists here. They are all experts in economy, aviation, and tourism sector, and also we have many experts in the audience that I warmly welcome. And I want to Ms. Sahar to rest assured, because this is the objective. We want to conduct a quality quantitative study, and I will not delve much into details because everything will be covered in the presentation. So I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Hany Tawfik, the moderator of the first session. Mr. Hany, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. In fact, I do not claim to be an expert in tourism or aviation. That's why I will try to stick to my expertise in economy. Today we are reviewing a topic that has been much discussed since the last part of the last century, and that might be the last session of discussing the concepts and rationale so that we can move into numbers. And what you mentioned a while ago reminded me of something. Against the protectionist measures taken to protect a national company. If I want to go to London and I have to pay $4,000 and also the ticket for Luxor is really high, but I can go to Madrid for less price. So when I researched the budget of Egypt Air and Egypt Railroad, so we had losses of 20 billion Egyptian pounds, and there are 30,000 employees, over 60 planes. So we have 1,000 or 1,500 overhead cost. So we need to restructure Egypt Air, whether we liberate it or not. Also, I asked Dr. Adla, because her PhD is on the economies of air transport, and she has a long experience in tourism, so she's really a reference person. I asked her to provide me with a number of studies. So what struck me is the comparison between the situation before and after opening skies in UAE and in Turkish, and there was a significant increase in the passenger number and a significant reduction of the ticket price, and the number of tourists increased from 1.5 to 6.5, and an increase in the direct jobs offered in aviation, and an increase in the number of jobs in the tourism sector in UAE. This means that there are a number of advantages. Of course, there is a cost that should be carefully calculated, and I want to seize this opportunity because I really respect economic studies, because I don't go, for example, for auditing offices to study something. These economic based studies are really important, because when we previously discussed the topic of the mortgage or real estate bubble, we had to depend on numbers. We had to calculate the financial cost due to the fall of prices. But there is another economic study. Of course, we should go for a financial study always, but also the economic rate of return is important. So financial and economic studies should be both taken into consideration. You don't only compare what you spend and what you got. You should take the social impact into consideration always. So we are in urgent need to have a solid economic study presented to the decision maker with the right economic impact of this policy. And these will amount to trillions, not billions, because the sightseeing and the touristic places in Egypt far exceeds the capacities of the airlines that we have, and this center has a role to play. There are many studies since the 90s, and Mr. Fuad Sultan was the only minister for both aviation and tourism, and he always said aviation should serve tourism and not the other way around. So I'm just moderating the session, and I don't belong to a certain sector, whether aviation or tourism, but we need quantitative analysis for these qualitative discussions we have been held for a very long time. We want to have a study that makes taking decisions easier for the presidency, the parliament, and the implementing agencies. Thank you so much, and sorry for taking long. I'm just the moderator, and I will always remind myself of so. Now I will just start like Dr. Hany. I'm not an expert in tourism or aviation. I'm just a professor in economics. So I want to stress two important points before presenting the presentation done by Dr. Maged al-Masry and General Abdel Fattah Kato. What is the purpose of the symposium, and what is the methodology we adopt in our research? And this methodology is different from other methodologies that we usually adopt. The symposium topic is not new, I have to say, and that was discussed much before between these two ministries, and no conclusive result was reached, because we knew many losses were made by Egypt Air. So are we speaking about Egypt Air from one side and Egypt on the other side? And of course, media and TV shows tackle the matter lightly, and the topic has become really sensitive. With the establishment of the Supreme Council of Tourism, the topic was much discussed, and we wanted to conduct a study to evaluate the benefits. And here comes the title: Are we losing certain opportunities? And the debate is still ongoing. Is it a lost opportunity or a waste of resources? So, what happens if we apply these open sky policies? So, we want to decide on this matter from an economic perspective and from an objective manner. We are not part of the aviation or the tourism sector. We are neutral. We are tackling the issue from an academic, economic point of view. Briefly, the research methodology is the revenue and cost analysis for evaluating the public policies. I want to go one step back. What are the different objectives any decision maker is after? Of course, cost effectiveness and economic efficiency. Also, social justice. Protecting the current and future generations' right, and of course the decision has to be accepted by the community. What are the criteria for taking these decisions? Of course, we have economic criteria. Would that generate some growth, some job opportunities? There is also legal criteria, administrative criteria, the capacity to take that decision and implement that. So I can liberate Egyptian skies, but if the state is not ready, then that will backfire and might have adverse impacts. Also, there is financial aspects, commercial aspects covering the agreements. Also, of course, some social criteria, some environmental criteria, among other criteria. We should take all these elements into consideration when we take any decision. What are the main components for this cost and revenue analysis? We should identify beneficiaries and affected groups. Some people will benefit and others might be affected. And that's normal. Second, we should evaluate the impact of this policy decision on the different groups, and here covering the beneficiaries and the affected. Also, quantitative analysis of the impact. What is the positive effect? What is the negative effect during the life of the project? That's is done to ensure the rights of the future generations. So we are doing so in quantitative terms. Also, we should ensure compensation or remedies for any affected groups, because you will always have some affected groups. So you should redress this damage. So these are the guidelines. So what we need to do is to assess the status quo, and that's part of the methodology, to assess the effect of the status quo and to assess the alternatives. The research questions posed for any alternative should include the drafting of this decision, should tackle the implementing agency, any contradiction, any difference that will be introduced to the status quo, and rationale for a change, effect and impact on the different community segments. This is the methodology in part. We will calculate the gross revenue minus the cost, the gross cost, and then we get a result. Then we move to the sensitivity analysis. We change the assumptions. What if a country changes so and so? What if this happens? Will the result remain positive or negative? And then we should compare the different scenarios or the different proposals. The methodology we adopt, especially in opening Egyptian skies, we answer the question of the number of passengers, the ticket price, and all the traditional methodologies are not comprehensive. That's why we adopt this. And of course, the traditional methodology might be subject, but our methodology is quantitative and evidence-based. We identify the affected groups objectively, and we have a holistic analysis of all the financial, economic, social, and environmental aspects, and we give a chance for the state to take into consideration any complementary policies to redress the situation. This is the methodology we adopt in our research. Now we will explain the point of view supporting open sky policies, and I would like to give the floor to Dr. Maged Al-Masry. He will review other countries' experiences, and then we will explain the history of developing civil aviation and the current situation of the sector, and then we will try to see how can we benefit from this decision. Good morning, everyone. I'm Engineer Maged Al Masri. I wish my title was Dr. Maged Al Masri, but it's not. I come from the aviation sector. That's what is my expertise is about. So I'm one of the aviation team, and I'm really interested in the aviation sector in general and civil aviation in particular in Egypt. And of course, I care for Egypt Air for two main reasons. One objective reason is that you cannot do anything in aviation without the flag carrier. It's the backbone of the sector. And of course, I belong to Egypt Air. I spend much of my career there. Here we are explaining the international trends and evaluating the experience of other countries in numbers. So it's a quantitative study, and I'm sorry, we will switch between Arabic and English here, and Dr. Abla is not really happy about that. But of course, I'll speak Arabic. So these are the list of references. Of course, the first thing, Egyptian Ministry of Civil Aviation reports on the air traffic passenger number. This is a very comprehensive report issued on an annual basis, and of course, we should always resort to this report. Also, the ECOW study for 2016 on liberalization of this sector, IATA 2013 document, and the intermester report on behalf of the international air transport in 2015, commissioned by the stakeholders in the international aviation sector like IATA, ACI, industry sectors. They were all supporting this study. Of course, Oxford Economic on the civil aviation in Egypt. 88 2009 study impact of international air service on Turkey, And the other studies is also on Turkey. There are a number of studies on Turkey. That's why we cited these studies. And the Action Task Aviation group is an important group in the international aviation sector, working on protecting the interests. And they had two studies in 2005 and 2008. Oxford Economics had another study on Egypt. And of course, there are some additional references, but I don't want to waste time on reading the reference list. So I want to briefly define the freedoms in the transport sector for those who are not involved in the transport or aviation sector. The first freedom is to fly from one country to other state. I'm sorry, no, it's wrong. It's just like to fly over another state. Sorry. The second freedom is the technical landing for refueling, and then you resume your flight. And of course, all the members of ICAO have this right to fly over other countries or to technically stop at other countries. The third freedom is to fly from its state to other state, and the fourth freedom is to fly from other state to own state, and most of the agreements tackle these two freedoms or two rights. The fifth freedom is to move or to take traffic from one country to other two states. The sixth freedom is to move between two foreign countries via your own state. The seventh freedom is to fly for between two other countries. So for example, I fly from France to Lebanon as Egypt Air. The eighth freedom is to start a domestic sector in this foreign country. The ninth freedom is to work domestically in a third country. So this is the brief introduction of the freedoms.
The definition of liberalization of air transport. First, market entry. This is the most updated this is the most updated definition. Any company can have market entry with the only limitations being imposed by the laws. As for the routes, there is no restrictions on the routes. It's based on my calculations. I can have the routes. As for the designation, any company can be a designated carrier. Rather than have one on a single designated carrier, we can have 10. There are no limitations on designation. The nationality. The national carrier should not be mostly owned by the state. It should be registered, however, in the state. Freedom of prices and based on the demand and supply. And lastly, the capacity. That you should utilize the capacities that you can offer. This is the universal definition of liberalization. The economic impact of the liberalization of air transport. ICAO has issued its own opinion, but in short, it says that liberalization helps with continuous growth of air traffic, attracts investment, enables the emergence of strong carriers. The airports have become passenger friendly. You cannot update the airport without having it become more passenger friendly, as due to the liberalization. A better use of the airspace, open competitive fares, with the best interest being in the customers' favor, and sustainable economic development are at state and regional level. It helps the economic development of the state and the neighboring countries. This is based on the ICAO's document. IATA had a similar point of view. I highlighted only one point. For airlines, liberalizations can promote cost efficiency, increase access to capital, and improve profitability and market value. So this is the opinion adopted by the IATA. The stakeholders conducted two studies, one 2006 and another in 2015. And this is a list of the group that sponsored the studies: IATA, Boeing, the 11 stakeholders that adopted commission of studies, and we only have 10 minutes, and we are still with the definitions. We only have 10 minutes left. This is the model that Intervista devised and the stakeholders adopted. The liberalizations culminated in job growth, enhanced productivity, and economic growth. This is a very complicated model, but this is the one that that has been adopted for liberalization. These are the model attributes. I'm not going to go into details. These stakeholders recognized this model to be valid for any country across the world that wanted to conduct the studies on liberalizations, and it could be rolled out in order to calculate the quantitative impact of the liberalization of air travel and air transport. The aviation economic effect it focuses on the aviation industry, the direct and indirect, and also the spin-off catalytic effect. All of these have to do with the impact of aviation. The indirect effect is the one that is in green, while the direct one is in blue. The quantitative indicators that were concluded from these studies are used as references to be rolled out across the globe. The growth rate of passenger grew from 18 to 75%, meaning that any two states are the movement between two states improving the liberalization on that route only can increase the impact from 18 to 75%. The airfare dropped from 10 to 40%. All of these figures are on an annual basis. The GDP grows according to the Oxford, meaning is 500 USD here in Egypt, while for the study it's 808 USD. This is the ICAO's report and gives you an image of how the liberalization could be like across the world. Those in the countries in red and gray are those who adopted liberalization. The study included 1,000 countries, found that 33% had full liberalization, 60% partial liberalization, while 7 not liberalized at all. As for the ASEAN group, they conducted different levels of liberalizations. I think that we have 8 countries here under this cluster. And it is clear that there was an 8.1 economic growth, and this was the limited liberalization based on the capacity and the prices, but they have entered into a level of liberalization that enhanced all the numbers. Thailand and Malaysia entered into liberalization routes with each other and with the United States, and there was a positive growth of 10%. Turkey Turkey is a good example. Before 1983, only public companies were allowed to operate, and it was monopolizing all the national carriers, and all the airports were state-owned. That was the situation before 1983. After 83, numerous airlines emerged. They started a liberalization, but it wasn't serious. The country was not serious about it until 2003. That's why it wasn't really effective. But in 2003, they entered into took real actions for liberalizations. They opened the domestic air transport, and they reduced the airport service charges, and also 50% of the companies, of the national companies, was traded in the exchange market. That was the impact or the effect of the liberalization after 2003. You can find the real results came after the actual actions for liberalizations were taken. The total passengers increased from 38 to 143 millions in 2013. The airlines, the Turkish airlines grew. So the national carriers had 40 millions, then it grew to 140, and also it had more staff from 11 million to 48. So the flagship carrier, the national transport company, is the backbone of any country. Brazil, this is a passenger traffic. After the liberalization, there was a growth in GDP and the passenger traffic, and they entered into 35 liberalization agreement.
And this is Morocco, and of course there's also growth in GDP. Now, effects. We have direct effects and we have indirect effects, whether economic or spin-off ones. This is the traffic movement in Egypt from 2010 to 2016. And this is, of course, based on the reports of the aviation. It's declining, and the share of Egypt Air is also declining. This chart is really important. The capacity of airports is okay, and there is a potential for more. So we should use all the untapped potential. If we apply the model of Intervista with like 16%, and if we liberate everything, of course, in theory, but this will give us an indicator of what will happen to the passenger numbers or employment. And the blue line here is for the effect. We have a capacity for 5 years if we had started in 2010. This is part of the Egyptian situation, right? So we will get back to that part because it's really important. The capacity at the airports can absorb 5 years of liberation and $500 for each additional passenger will, of course, affect the GDP. All the studies and experiences conclude that opening the skies has a positive impact. These are the recommendations, but there is still a need for further research. The model used is really good, but we need a plan for legislation for airports. We need to convert Cairo Airport into a hub one in cooperation with Egypt Air. Thank you so much, engineer.